of July 2007. Dr. Robert Shackman and Stephen Herlock and myself, Mike Stubblefield, are present. Will all those giving testimony rise to be sworn in, please?
Please raise your right hand. You and each of you do solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to give in the matters now pending before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do. Thank you. Tonight, we will be hearing petition number 796, petition of Vintage Petroleum Production, LLC, for an interim variance from Rule 29.C, conditions on permits, violation of permit to operate number 00310, condition 9.B, and Rule 7415, boilers, steam generators, and process heaters, section B.1 requirements. Would the petitioners please state your names and your positions or job titles for the record, please?
Yes, my name is Jim Lovins, L-O-V as in Victor, I-N-S. I'm the Senior Environmental Advisor for Vintage Production California, LLC.
Thank you.
David Stoneburner, last name S-T-O-N-E-B-U-R-N-E-R. I'm the Production Coordinator for the Plants and Pipelines team for Vintage Production California here in Ventura.
Thank you, gentlemen. Would one of you or both of you please state your petition?
Good evening, gentlemen, staff. We have a gas plant located in the Pyro area that processes all of the produced gas. It comes from roughly 11 leases. It's something like 8 permit units, but it's a number of leases lumped together. We were put on notice because of some pre-testing that the process heater at the Santa Clara Valley gas plant was not meeting its emissions as stated in the permit conditions of permit number 00310. And we immediately called in a breakdown report for that. We felt that, all of a sudden here, something we just noticed and called it in. Subsequent discussions with the district resulted in they didn't feel it was a breakdown and said, okay, interim variance would probably be the best way, interim and regular. And we agreed and prepared the paperwork as quick as possible. Some background on the Santa Clara Valley gas plant. It processes about 7 million standard cubic feet a day of natural gas. From, as I say, roughly 11 leases. Those 11 leases also produce in the neighborhood of about 3,000 barrels of oil a day. Without the process heater, David Stoneburner can go into a little bit more detail of exactly how the process heater works. We cannot process the gas at the Santa Clara Valley gas plant. And therefore our petition is to be able to operate the heater in its existing condition until a replacement heater is secured and put in place. David?
So in our gas processing plant, much like a refinery, we require a furnace type of a heater to heat some sort of a heat medium. In this case, we're heating oil, which is circulated throughout the plant where we need it. There are several users of heating oil in the plant. The two main ones are what we call the dehydration process regenerator, and the other one is the product fractionator. It's like a distillation unit or a little boiler, if you will. So this furnace provides heat to the heat oil, the heat transfer oil that's circulated throughout the plant. Without the heating oil or without the process heat available, the plant has to be shut down because we cannot run the cryogenic process, which extracts the liquids, which makes the gas saleable to the utility, and nor can we process the liquids that drop out of the gas as a result.
Thank you, gentlemen. Does the board have any? Oh, and just for the record, I'd like to state that Ms. Nicewinder is also present tonight.
I have a question.
Dr. Shackman.
Could you describe what happened in the breakdown, particularly the district's conclusion that it wasn't an emergency?
Doctor, I'd have to defer to the district on their resolution that it was not an emergency, but what I can say is the insulation in the firebox of the heater has, in essence, fallen down on a number of the burners inside the process heater, and that affects the combustion and flow within the firebox. We're not getting, I guess it would probably be complete combustion, and which puts us over on our CO limit.
And you're going to be operating this equipment anyway in the variance period
Yes, doctor.
with this insulation obstructing the burners.
Yes.
You're not able to go in and remove it.
The heater itself has an access way of about yay big, and the way the burner tubes are situated, I believe they're about this far, about 6 inches away from the shell of the unit, and the insulation goes around the outside, and a portion of it goes up the flue. What has happened is the top insulation has fallen down on the top burners, and that's affecting the combustion and the flow up the flue. In order, we thought about trying to get into the heater through the manway, and due to the fact that the insulation is basically in an area about 4 to 6 inches thick and above the burners, and the way it's attached, it can't be pulled out. The only way to get to it would essentially be turn the heater off, get all of the combustible material out of it, cut one end of the heater off, a large fired vessel, essentially an oversized water heater, and then go in, pull out the insulation, and reseal the heater back up.
So you've considered this and determined that wasn't a good way to go.
Yes, sir.
Do you feel there was any maintenance you should have been doing that wasn't done?
No. It's the failure of the insulation inside was couldn't be seen, and as I say, we discovered it during maintenance activities prior to our upcoming biennial source test.
Now, the CO that's going to be released from the process, could you describe the release situation? Is there a tall stack of some kind?
David, can you help me here?
Doctor, could you ask the question again? I'm not sure I understand what you're...
There's going to be excess carbon monoxide
Yes, sir.
released. I want to understand the geometry of the release process. And I just threw out the concept of a stack.
Yes, sir.
I know you're not going to flare.
Correct.
So how will it be released?
It will be released through a stack, the exhaust
How high
stack.
will that be?
It's about 15 feet off the ground.
And then what's in the neighborhood?
Our office building is just under 100 feet away. The plant process is approximately 200 feet away, where there's an occupied plant building, if you will, where operators and technicians and craftspersons check in from time to time. Occupied during work hours.
So the emissions will come into your buildings,
It's possible.
but it won't affect the larger community.
No.
And
No.
are you able to do any monitoring of carbon monoxide levels in your buildings?
In our buildings, we could rent some portable carbon monoxide testing equipment.
Is it part of your routine?
No, sir.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Sure.
Do any other members of the board have any questions of the petitioners? Mr. Herlock?
Yes. You've indicated, have you read the draft order? Is there anything in it that you have problems with, or?
Yes, thank you. There's just one item, and I don't believe that it would be of major consequence, and that is on increments of progress, page 6, item number 2, submit a complete permit to operate application for the replacement heater to the district by July 23rd, 2007. We'd like to extend that date by at least 2 weeks, so we can have the complete information from the manufacturer. We do have a purchase order in place, and the manufacturer has acknowledged receipt of the purchase order. Our largest problem there is the manufacturer said that delivery date will be on or before October 22nd. So putting together the technical information for district staff, I essentially would like an extra 2 weeks on that. And I also think that probably permit to number 2. I believe that would be a permit to construct application rather than a permit to operate application.
Well, what does that do to number 3? Since that's 2 weeks after July 23rd.
The monthly progress reports?
Right.
We would envision the monthly progress reports to be, the monthly fuel usage for the heater, monthly fuel use, every 30 days fuel usage for the heater, and hopefully by that time a list of milestones that will be coming due, i.e. the construction of the cement pad, when the cement's going to be poured, the firm date for when the heater is going to be delivered, and the exact milestones for each one. That's what I would.
But what I'm asking you is, how does if we give you another 2 weeks on number 2, that's then the same date as number 3, approximately. In other words, are you?
I don't see any problem complying with the same date of the 7th, but I would just ask the extra time to put together the technical information on the burner for the district.
Can I clarify something? Is it correct that on page 6, item A2 should read, submit a complete permit to construct?
It would be a complete authority to construct.
Could you explain that? Authority to construct is still a request?
Yes, it should read, submit a complete authority to construct application.
On number 2.
That's on number 2. That's the terminology that we use.
In Vintage's petition, on page 5, you said that Vintage will be able to submit a permit to construct application within 12 days of the granting of the interim variance. Have you had this? You filled this part out, is that correct?
Yes, and that was before I had the information regarding the long lead time for the unit.
I don't understand how the lead time for the unit affects your ability to submit the permit or the authority to construct application.
I have information on the burner. I do not have from our facilities engineering as of yet the fuel throughput and the exact model of the burner. I just have a fact sheet for overall burners, not the specific burner we're buying.
Well, can't they fax it to you or email it to you? I mean, or do they not have the information either? Is this a custom-built unit, or is it off the shelf? And
it is engineered. It's a custom unit for the unit.
so every unit that goes out has its own specs?
Yes.
So that it's your position that you wouldn't be able to have the information to complete the authority to construct application within 2 weeks, approximately 2 weeks of tonight, I guess.
No, 2 weeks after July 23rd. 2 weeks later.
Would not be able to make the July 23rd.
Right.
I don't know what all is.
I'll commit to the, where is it? I'll commit to the 23rd date. I just wanted to get all the information in the district. I dislike a letter coming back that says we need more information, and I have a good idea, since this is a new unit, that district staff will want as much information as possible regarding it. But I will commit to the 23rd.
You mean not simply a new unit, but an all-new, you mean it's a new design or something that they haven't done before? See, what we're concerned about is this is smog season, and this is carbon monoxide we're talking about here. So personally, I'd like to see a certain sense of urgency about getting it fixed. Particularly when it's, particularly when your own office personnel might be downwind from it.
I understand. I'll commit to the order as it stands, application for the replacement heater to the district by the 23rd, and/or expedited if we can get the manufacturer to expedite his delivery.
Thank you.
Is that the only
go ahead.
Area of concern you had in the draft order?
Yes.
One of the things that I would like to be able to do is compare the emissions associated with flaring with the emissions, the actual or projected emissions of the unit as operating. And in your permit, you said that you would provide those calculations. That is the calculations, I guess, based on your source test. The district didn't have those, I think, at the time that the draft order was
I have not
prepared.
received the finalized version of the source test.
It says to be calculated. I
Yeah,
thought
right.
they were going to be calculated for this meeting. Do you have an approximate value for the CO that, other than over 400 ppm?
No, sir, I do not.
How do you know that it was over 400?
We had a handheld instrument and for our first check, and then the source test got word from the source tester, independent third party, that the CO did not meet the permit limits. They'd have to review the strip charts to give an exact number.
So you just don't know how much CO is emitted, other than that it's over 400 ppm?
No, I do not know the exact number for the CO being emitted at this point in time.
Okay.
Well, if your handheld tool indicated, was it 401? Was it 600? 800? I mean, it was over 400. How much over 400 ppm is it?
The handheld instrument is not a calibrated instrument, but it did read 40,000 parts per million.
40,000 parts per million?
So 100 times the permit limit.
Right. Thank you. Do the members of the board have any further questions of the petitioner?
I think I still have a couple.
Oh, go for it.
The alternatives that are discussed in the draft order and in your petition include flaring the gas, and it appears from the information that if you were to flare the gas, you would exceed your annual limit in a matter of days. In addition to that, producing a significant amount over your permit, but it sounds like that what I was hoping for was to be able to compare the flaring emissions with the projected emissions. And I guess, I realize that 40,000 ppm is not quantitative, but I'm wondering how 40,000 ppm would compare with the large amount of CO that would result from the flare.
Please.
If I may, I'm looking at a letter dated June 28th, 2007, and there are some estimates that are calculated.
Do we have this letter?
Do they have this letter here?
Is this from the district staff to the hearing board? Is that the
Yes.
letter you're
Yes.
talking about?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, what page are you looking at, please?
Take a look at page 3 of 4.
Thank you.
What document are you referring to?
Letter from district staff.
Okay.
If we look at the pounds per day of
Okay.
carbon monoxide for the case of flaring 7 million cubic feet a day, and that's what we would do if we had to shut the heater down, because we would have to shut the plant down. And then all of the gas streams going to the plant would have to go to flare. So this is an approximation of the pounds per day of carbon monoxide that would be emitted by flaring that gas. And I'm not sure of the basis of the pounds per day from the Lakota heater. Is that guessing as to the emissions?
The emissions that we show for the Latoka heater are from our permit files. They're based on standard emission factors from the Environmental Protection Agency.
Okay. So if
So the numbers that we're looking at are on the second chart. Those are for a working Latoka heater, correct?
That's correct.
So we're still,
Well, I think that at least partly suggests to me that if the .13 is based on 400 ppm and if the 40,000 ppm is accurate, we're talking about 100 times more, like 13 pounds instead of 113 pounds.
that's correct.
What it looks like.
Is kind of the best estimate that we have.
Mr. Herlock?
Yes.
Maybe I can clarify just a little bit here. In my career at APCD, I've looked at a number of source tests for boilers and heater treaters and things like we're talking about. And they typically, in good condition, emit about 100 parts per million. And I would expect that the EPA emission factors that we used are probably based on a factor of maybe about 100 parts per million, not
flaring.
the full 400 parts.
For flaring?
No, I'm sorry, for the heater treater.
Oh, so you're saying
That's when it's functional, right?
the .13
That's
is
right.
based on 100, not on 400.
That's kind of a rough guesstimation.
I understand.
But they already have a reading of 40,000, is that correct? 40,000 parts per million?
Yeah.
Which is 100 times over
The-
what the draft says of 400, it's
Yeah.
in excess of 400. So that
Yeah, just
40,000 parts per million, comparing that to flaring, it almost seems as if it's putting out more carbon monoxide than flaring, is it not?
No, that would now be 400 times instead of 100 times.
Yeah.
So the flaring is 1,000 times greater than the permit,
Okay.
so it's still. Do you have any other possible uses for the gas? Can you use it on site? So some of the people, I think even Vintage may use gas for powering generators or other.
That's a good question. Yeah, we do provide ourselves as much fuel as we can use. This is primarily a production stream. We do use what we can, and everything else is processed and sold.
And what you can use or could use is insignificant compared to the 7,000 standard cubic feet per day?
Yeah, the heat demand of all of the leases for tank heating and so forth is really very small in comparison to the production stream.
Do you have the option to reduce the process, the total process flow by reducing the production of these 10 or 11 leases that are feeding this facility?
I'm not quite sure how to answer the question. There are a number of wells that feed lease streams, and all of those lease streams, the crude oil goes into tanks for sales, and the gas comes to the plant for processing. So could we curtail the heat demand of the plant by curtailing oil production? I believe so, but we would not. The way the heater has failed, regardless of the heat demand of the plant, we would have a difficult time meeting emissions and or meeting heat demands of the plant, regardless of its feed stream. Could we reduce it? Yes, but it would be hard to say how much.
Are you saying that reducing the production, either oil or gas or both, from these wells would not be a significant fraction of the 3,000 barrels and 7,000 cubic feet per day that?
I'm sorry, I don't really understand the question.
Well, we would like to find that you're reducing emissions to the maximum extent possible.
Okay.
And it occurs to me that one way one knob you may have on your process is to reduce what's coming from the wells. And my question is that significant? Without shutting in any wells?
No, we cannot curtail the feed gas to the plant without shutting in. Well, let's see how I say that. The only option to reducing the feed gas stream to the plant is to send that gas to flare or shut in the wells. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Does the board have any further questions of the petitioner? Does the district have any questions for the petitioner?
Yes, I have a couple. Before I start with that, I need to make a correction to the tables that we presented in the draft variance order and our letter of June 28th. In our letter on page 3 of 4 in the first table, for NOx emissions under pounds per day, it shows 1.5. Mm-hmm. It should be 499.8. Right here. And then that same correction should be made in the draft variance order, the table that's on page 4. So several questions for petitioners. The flare that you would end up burning the gas in, where is that in relation to the heater treater?
There are several flares, emergency flares, that are stationed throughout the county. But the 2 permitted flares that could take all of this gas are located in Shields Canyon, due, I guess that's west, is it not? Approximately 5 miles due west. And also the Torrey Canyon flare is the other permitted flare, which is due south of the plant about a mile.
Are there any facilities in those 2 areas where workers are, or any nearby residences?
Workers are in both areas each working day. They're operating wells in the area, operating facilities in the area. So yeah, it doesn't present any unusual or unforeseeable dangers to them, but they are in those areas.
Okay. If this variance wasn't granted and you were required to shut in the leases that are feeding into this plant, would you still have to flare some gas?
For some period of time, when we shut wells down, those wells would continue to flow gas for some unknown period of time. I don't know, in some wells, in the case of some wells that would be hours, in the case of other wells that may be days. The wells are exposed, of course, to the reservoir pressure. Different leases, different areas, different reservoirs have different bottom hole pressures. So as the wells are shut down, we're not pulling fluid out of those wells anymore. Produced fluids would begin to fill the wellbore, and once there was enough hydrostatic head to hold back the reservoir pressure, then gas would stop flowing to the plant.
Okay, so just a matter of shutting off the wells doesn't necessarily mean that there's no flaring that's going to occur.
Yeah, there will continue to be some flaring for an unknown period of time. We've not experienced that, so I can't tell you what it would be.
Probably more for Mr. Levin's question. Do you know when the source test report is going to be issued?
Typically, the source test report, the final report, comes in, so we're able to submit it to the district within 45 days of the source test date. I can get them to expedite and get us a draft report probably within 7 to 10 days, and so we'll have at least a ballpark number.
Okay. Those are all the questions that I had.
Do the members of the board have any questions for the district? Dr. Shackman?
Yes, Mr. Duval. Could you explain why this was not considered eligible for an emergency variance, and in what respect they failed to perform proper maintenance?
At the time that I heard about it and it was brought to my attention and we had a discussion in the office, to me it seemed that it was what I felt was maintenance related, and hearing now might I think changes my opinion of that. But it was also age related to the age of the equipment. One other thing that we talked about in the office, I believe, kind of dealt with the timing issue, because we understood that this wasn't going to be just a 30-day project to replace the heater. Additional time is going to be required, and in order to get them the proper relief, we would probably be having to come for an interim variance and a regular variance anyway, even if we did support an emergency variance.
Now, in your good cause discussion, you support the concept that there is good cause shown. Is that still the district's position?
Yes, it is.
And let me ask you also about the additional information we were given tonight about the handheld monitor measurement of CO, the 40,000 parts per million.
Yes.
I'm thinking that the community standard for CO is something like 9 parts per million. That's the EPA standard. Does that sound about right?
Yes, an ambient standard of about 9 parts per million. That might be averaged over 8 hours.
Okay. And the OSHA standard, are you familiar with what that would be?
No, I'm not.
I remember it used to be about 50, and whether that was a threshold limit or whether that was an average, I don't recall. I didn't bring the documentation on that. But it seems with going from 40,000 parts per million, not very far away to office spaces, you might have a problem here with the OSHA standard and to the extent that it's into the community with the ambient standard. Has the district any point of position on that?
Well, I would say that if meteorological conditions are conducive, that being maybe some type of an inversion, wind patterns blowing the, downdrafting the stack into the offices, could potentially cause some health impacts.
Well, what's the modeling show for a 15-foot stack and with the prevailing winds that they have?
Oh, gosh, I couldn't really tell you, but you're probably looking at a stack exhaust of maybe 300 degrees Fahrenheit, which would give the stack exhaust a pretty good lift up above the top of the stack.
But it would settle.
Yes, it would tend to settle, but I can't say where or how far downwind it would settle. And a lot of that is meteorological.
Do you think we can correctly conclude that there's no public health threat?
Well, it is possible that the employees could be subjected to excess levels of CO.
And if we reached that conclusion, we couldn't grant the variance.
That's correct.
And the consequence then, with flaring, would it be worse?
Well, with flaring, you would have some very large amounts of not only carbon monoxide emissions at sounds like at other locations throughout the county.
You mentioned Shields Canyon.
Shields Canyon, Torrey Canyon.
Yeah.
You'd also be generating additional levels, quite high levels of reactive organic compounds and oxides of nitrogen, which form ozone, and we are in ozone season at this time.
And if they shut down, they'd still be flaring.
That's correct.
So the risk of continuing a shutdown process could be more dangerous than the risk of operating under a variance.
That's correct.
And is that the district's position on it?
Yes.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Do any other members of the board have questions for staff?
I do.
Ms. Nicewinder?
Continuing the last line of questions, immediate compliance would result in shutting in 10 permitted operations. Exactly how would that, I mean, literally, if we ask for immediate compliance and we say the 40,000 parts per million is unacceptable, what happens to the operation? And maybe we can also ask that of the petitioner, but, I mean, is this an option?
Shutting down the operations?
Yeah.
That would be a decision that they would have to, that the company would have to consciously make. If they chose not to shut down operations, we would, I think, be forced into taking enforcement action at that point. That could either be seeking an abatement order through your board and issuing notices of violation and monetary penalties for a knowing and willful violation. Penalties for the notices of violation could be as high as, I think it's $40,000 per day.
All right, thank you.
I have an additional question.
Go ahead, Dr.
Do you
Shine.
feel that monitoring at the work site for a CO would adequately address the potential risk to the people there?
I think it would be a good mitigation measure. I believe that they could get their hands on a CO monitor for this period of time that we're talking about.
Well, people buy them and put them in houses, so it's not hard to get your
Oh,
hands on one.
yeah, I was thinking more of a more industrial handheld monitor.
Well, the district could require that they bring an industrial hygienist in and do formal measurements on a continuing basis to make sure that they're not injuring the people there.
Yes, we could.
And a condition of the order that would include that sounds like it's the way we're going to meet the requirement to not create a danger to public health. Is there any precedent for doing that? I can't remember an order where we did that.
I don't think we've ever done it as long as I've been in this job.
And I've been here a long time and it hasn't happened. So is there any reason we couldn't do that? Any legal
No.
barrier to it?
Can I ask our counsel if we do that, recognizing that there is a potential for safety issues with at least the employees on site, does that do anything with respect to the board? If we do grant the variance but condition some additional safety measures?
Well, the condition should be enforceable so that the district can monitor the results, and it should have some resulting consequences. For example, if there's an exceedance, then you want some kind of removal of the staff from the location, and then the district would enforce it as it would enforce any other condition, and probably in the normal course would not come back to you except as an update when the regular variance hearing comes. The main task is to make the condition enforceable.
Could the district write the language that would meet that requirement?
Yeah, we could. We could work with the board chair to work out that language, but I would see the framework of it, that they would monitor on a daily basis for CO emissions within their working office space out there. If there is an exceedance of the, I would say, of the OSHA standard, that they would remove the employees from the workplace. They would report immediately to the district.
That sounds like the sort of mitigation that would please me and allow me to say we probably don't have an issue with the public health part of our requirements.
I would support that.
I want to ask about another option. And also, I'm concerned that if there is no carbon monoxide detector there now, then the health of possibly the health of the employees is already under threat. Correct? I mean, the Latoka heater is malfunctioning, and by with your own scan tool, you got a 40,000 ppm reading.
Correct.
So their health is already under threat right now. So my question is, I mean, perhaps I should address my question to the petitioners first. Is it possible to move everybody except operational people who have to be there to run the site? I mean, could the office people be relocated, put in a modular somewhere else, or just moved off site until you're done, until there's no danger?
Relocation of staff is always possible, but we have that monitoring equipment readily available and can test first thing in the morning.
And you're not concerned about you think that'll be sufficient? The
Yeah,
monitor?
we can check the area in the office and around the office where people work and make sure that the CO levels are not exceeding week to week.
Are you currently using a monitor?
No, we have those monitors available for other types of operations, but something that we could implement and use on that site.
Could I ask a question? How soon could you get that monitor operation started out there?
The personal monitors we could implement in the morning.
I have no further questions. Do any other members of the board have any further comments or questions for staff or for the petitioner?
I have
Mr. Gerlach.
I have some questions for staff. Is it, as I read the background material in the draft order, it appears that if a new heater is installed, that the requirements for it will be more stringent than the ones for the Latoka heater. Is that correct? And can you give us any idea, if that is correct, how much less emissions will come based on the backed?
Well, the Latoka heater's pretty old, from my understanding. So I don't believe it's gone through our new source review process as if it was a new piece of equipment. So we're primarily interested in oxides of nitrogen emissions from this type of equipment. And a new piece of equipment would have to go through new source review, best available control technology review. They may have to meet an emission limit for NOx of 50 to 35 parts per million. Right now, they may be at 75 to 100, 150 parts per million.
You mean if they were operating correctly?
If they were operating correctly.
Okay. Another question relating to the emissions. It appears that the permitted levels for SOx are 0, but the estimate for the flaring is fairly significant. Do you know where the sulfur comes from and why it's not part of the permit?
It's in trace amounts in the gas, but when the EPA emission factors do have that there is a factor that we use for sulfur in gas, in produced gas. It's so small it normally comes up to be 0 on the permit, or very small quantities. But when you're talking about 7 million cubic feet per day, it gets pretty large. And I think the factors we use have a higher sulfur content than produced gas, which is considered to be pipeline quality.
I have one further question of the petitioner. What happens to the propane and the butane that get stripped in your distillation process?
The propane and butane is sold as a combined product to a refiner.
Thank you.
Do any members of the board have any further questions of staff or the petitioner? All right, then I'm going to close this part of the hearing. Do any members of the public wish to testify? No? All right. All right, I'm going to call the hearing closed. Is there any further discussion by the board? Dr. Shackman?
I think we should grant the variance primarily on the terms laid out in the order, but adding that there will be a monitoring requirement.
For CO.
Yeah, for CO in the workplace, and that the district will have to approve the way the monitoring is done, and that they receive the reports daily, and that they have the authority to take necessary measures if the CO results exceed OSHA acceptable levels. The exact wording, I think the district wants to put that together and work with you on it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Neiswinder. Any discussion on the motion?
Well, let me add, we have to correct that
Yes, sir.
authority to construct in
right,
page
yeah.
6.2, and perhaps there was something else brought up.
There was the table.
The district
Yeah.
changed the
NOx emissions.
table.
pounds per day of NOx to 499.8.
And there's also a correction on the top of page 2, I believe. It should be the
And then
hearing
the
board.
increments of progress, yeah.
Oh, that's true, too. And then on page 2, before equipment location, I think it should be changed from hearing board chair to the hearing board.
Yes. So all of those changes would be incorporated in the revised order. That would be the motion. I guess it's seconded. Is that acceptable?
Correct.
So there we are.
Okay, clerk, would you like to take the roll, please?
Ms. Neiswinder?
Aye.
Dr. Shackman?
Aye.
Mr. Herlock?
Aye.
Vice Chair Stubblefield?
Aye.
Thank you.
Your petition is granted.
Board members, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Are there
items, are there any other items to discuss tonight?
No, none that we are aware of. I think the next hearing will be when Vintage comes back before your board again, probably in September, sometime around mid-September.
So right now, there's nothing in the pipeline for the rest of July or August. Is that correct?
Not that we're aware of. Senior moment. Not that we can think of right now.